Okay, this is an example of a forest plot. Okay, this diagram. So a forest plot is used when we wanted to visualize the meta-analysis findings. Okay, if you look at this diagram, at this forest plot, okay, you can see that there are a list of studies. These are the ID, the ID number. For example, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there are 10 studies. Okay, for this particular meta-analysis, these 10 studies are actually performing experiments. Okay, they are performing experiments on pair programming. Alright, so they are comparing between pair programming and solo programming. Okay, and this is the number of years when the studies were published, and this column is reporting the results, the sample size, the means, and the standard deviation. Okay, so if you notice, the forest plots is actually telling you the effect size for each individual study, as you can see in this small rectangle. This small rectangle is telling whether the effect size is positive or negative. Okay, is supporting or not supporting. So as you can see, this one is they are conducting experiment to study the effects of pair programming on improving students' performance in final exams. So they wanted to see whether pair programming is good or not, in improving students' performance in final exam. So they measure the students' grades, in the final exam. So for each individual study, as you can see here, they actually presented quite a diverse findings. Although these studies are homogeneous in the sense that they are all doing experiment comparing pair programming and solo programming, and they are all using students as their subject, and they are all using students at higher education institutions. So they are homogeneous in that sense. So if you notice, the horizontal line here is actually referring to the confidence interval for each study. And when we pool the results, when we pool the effect size from each of these studies, okay, this is what we will obtain, the average effect size. So the average effect size here is just 0.16. Okay, 0.16. So this effect size, the pool or average effect size, 0.16 is considered small. Okay, it's considered small. So what this means is that the influence or the effects of pair programming in improving students' final exams is not that strong. The evidence is not showing that it is strong. So it's, in terms of its practical significance or meaningfulness, actually it's not that strong. Okay, as you can see in each individual study's findings. So some is supporting, some is somewhat diverse, somewhat different results. Okay, so the forest plot showing us some small boxes here, as I explained just now. The small boxes indicate the point estimates of effect size in a single study. The horizontal line crosses each study represents confidence interval. Okay, I'm talking about this line. Okay, and the diamond at the bottom of the plot represents the pool effect or the average effect size after pooling all studies. Okay, this is one example of a forest plot that we can come up with when we conduct a meta-analysis. And this is another example. Okay, another example of performing a meta-analysis. It combined results or findings from 6 studies. All these 6 studies represented by all these study IDs, they are all doing experiments. Okay, they are doing experiment, they are comparing between pair programming and solo programming, and to see whether the pair programming is good or not in improving students' assignment. And it happened that from this result, we can see the pool effect size is much greater, which is 0.67, right? So this tells us that it's actually showing a medium effect size. Okay, the medium effect size. So how do we categorize the effect size, whether it is small or whether it is a medium or large? All right. So there are a number of reference actually we can use. For example, from Campanus, small effect size considered as between 0.0 until 0.376. Medium effect size is from 0.378 until 1. Large effect size is from 1.02 until 3.40. So this is just an indicator for us, to guide us, to see whether the effect is actually significant or not. So what this result tells us is that the impact or the effect of pair programming, the effect based on the findings from each of these experiments, it shows that it actually providing a strong effect, sorry, not that strong, but medium effect size, but this is still significance in terms of its practical significance. Okay, that is the numerical synthesis. Now on the descriptive synthesis, right? So descriptive synthesis is an approach to the synthesis of findings from multiple studies that relies primarily on the use of words and text to summarize and explain the findings of the synthesis. It adopts a textual approach to the process of synthesis to tell the story of the findings from the included studies. This is from Popeye in 2006. Okay, so as the name implies, okay, we are talking about descriptive. Just now we are talking about numerical synthesis. Now is descriptive. So descriptive synthesis use words and text. Okay, use words and text. When we want to combine the studies, we are more to explain the story. We are more to explaining the story. So it is actually adopting a textual approach, in the process of synthesizing the evidence. So there are a number of methods. Okay, there are a number of methods to conduct a synthesis, descriptive synthesis. Okay, so for example, one can do narrative synthesis or thematic analysis, comparative analysis, case survey, meta-ethnography, content analysis, and many more. These are only some examples. Okay, so bear in mind that when we perform the synthesis of evidence, whether in our systematic review or mapping study, it is not necessarily that we have to use all of these methods. Okay, we choose the methods if it's suitable. Okay, for example, if let's say in your mapping study or in your systematic review, there are a number of quantitative studies and there are a number of experiments, for example, a number of formal experiments or control experiments, where you there's a potential for you to actually combine the study findings. So in that sense, then it is feasible to do a numerical synthesis. Otherwise, that is not feasible. Okay, so it is not mandatory that you must always do numerical synthesis in every synthesis of findings. Okay, and similarly, when we perform the descriptive synthesis methods, this is the only choice we have if we couldn't do the numerical synthesis. Okay, and in most cases, from my experience, descriptive methods are the most that people use. The most the kind of method that people use is to perform synthesis based on descriptive technique, whether by using narrative or thematic analysis or meta-ethnography or content analysis. Okay, it varies depending on the suitability. Again, depending on the suitability. Actually, it's not rigid in that sense. Okay, you can choose any of these methods, okay, that you think is suitable. Okay, for example, narrative synthesis. Okay, so as the name implies, narrative. Okay, you are actually providing narrative of. So it tells a story that originates from the primary studies. Okay, raw evidence and interpretations can be structured. So normally when someone is choosing a narrative synthesis method, when they wanted to present the findings from their review, they can either use a table. Okay, tabulation of data. Okay, they can perform groupings, they can perform clustering or classification, they can do vote counting. So these are all descriptive tools, okay, in supporting the story, the text that describe about the findings. Okay, in most studies, normally people don't really describe the method that they use, but actually we can sort of interpret by means of the way they present the results, and in most cases normally descriptive synthesis is a choice. Okay, thematic analysis. Here, as the name implies, we are actually concerned about the theme, yeah, the theme or the topic. So this particular method aims at identifying, analyzing, and reporting patterns or themes in the primary studies. So what happens is that we have to identify what are the themes. So in each primary study, you can see what are the specific theme that the study is reporting. So we capture those themes and we can organize those themes. Okay. It minimally organizes and describes the data set in rich detail and frequently interprets various aspects of the research topic. Okay, thirdly, comparative analysis. And this is the mixed synthesis method that analyzes complex causal connections using Boolean logic to explain relations between cause and effect in primary studies. Yeah, this is a combination of synthesis methods. Because you might need to use this the Boolean logic to explain what are the relationships between the cause and effects in the primary studies. And number 4, case study. Case survey, not case study, case survey, right? So this is a formal process for systematically coding relevant data from a large number of case studies for quantitative analysis. It aggregates existing research by applying survey instrument of specific questions to each primary study. So this particular method is particularly suitable if you are dealing with a large number of case studies. Yeah. So let's say there are a lot of quantitative studies that are reporting case studies. Okay, maybe you can see more than 50%, of your primary studies actually performing maybe case studies. So it is feasible, to actually perform a systematic coding approach. Excuse me. And then the next method is meta-ethnography. Right, this is also one of the most common technique used. It translates studies into one another and synthesizes the translations into concepts that go beyond individual studies. There are some approach that people use in conducting meta-ethnography, but basically it's still narrative in the manner, okay, because you are synthesizing the translations of the studies. So actually it is describing more more than the findings reported in individual study. And content analysis, this is also a typical method, typical one of the common method that people use to perform synthesis evidence. It refers to a systematic way of categorizing and coding studies under broad thematic headings by using extraction tools designed to aid reproducibility. Occurrences of each theme are counted and tabulated. This is another way, similar to thematic analysis, but there is a proper method to perform the coding, okay, as a way to categorize the studies. And then in the end of the day, you will count how many. Okay, so you will actually count the occurrence of each theme identified based on the codings. Okay.